Hello and welcome to another episode in our series of 1,000 Evidences. In this one, number 215, we will be talking about a few of the many evidences that Brigham Young was a true prophet of God. One of the recurring comments about Brigham Young by some critics is that he was not a very spiritual man, that he was bigoted and arrogant. However, he was just the opposite. Too modest to boast about his spirituality. What did his non-LDS unbiased contemporaries say about him? We have a couple of comments here. One by the famed writer Ralph Waldo Emerson. He described Brigham Young as a genius and a great example in the way he subdued the desert and was able to turn it into a habitable garden. Another comment by Sir Richard Burton, a famed explorer and writer, met with President Brigham Young during one of his travels, describing him as affable and impressive, simple and courteous. He shows no signs of dogmatism, bigotry, or fanaticism. He assumes no airs of extra sanctimoniousness. He has the plain, simple manners of honesty. There is a total absence of pretension in his manner, and he has been so long used to power that he cares nothing for its display. The prophet is no common man, he went on to say. He has none of the weaknesses and vanity which characterize the uncommon man. Besides these comments, and we could cite others, there's some amazing miracles that transpired in connection with the life of President Brigham Young. One particular incident was his, what is called the transfiguration of Brigham Young. He was transfigured before thousands. On August the 8th, 1844, thousands of members of the church assembled at Nauvoo to hear Sidney Rigdon and Brigham Young speak about who should succeed the slain prophet Joseph Smith. Rigdon presented himself as the guardian of the church. He spoke at length with his powerful and persuasive manner. Brigham, on the other hand, was not polished or loquacious. His simple and sincere approach, saying that the keys of leadership were transferred to the quorum of the 12 apostles, captivated the congregation. Many in the congregation were greatly impressed when they witnessed Brigham transfigured into the image and voice of the prophet Joseph Smith. One of the earliest records of recorded descriptions of that event was written in February 1846 by George Lobb. He wrote, "Now when President Young arose to address the congregation, his voice was the voice of Brother Joseph, and his face appeared as Joseph's face, and should I not have seen his face but heard his voice, I should have declared that it was Joseph's." The result was that the congregation voted unanimously in favor of Brigham Young's point of view. There are other things that happened in the life of Brigham Young. One example is that he had the gift of healing. Again, he did not brag about this. He did not speak very much about these miracles. As we said earlier, he was very modest. But in the presence of many witnesses, President Young administered to a woman in southern Utah who had been paralyzed by a stroke, and she was instantly healed and walked home unassisted. Besides the gifts of healing, which were done before many witnesses, are the prophecies that President Young made. Many prophecies, again, did not speak a lot about these. We have some records. In 1846, as thousands of the saints struggled with sickness in their midwinter departure from Nauvoo, President Young prophesied that the apostles who seemed near death with illness would be strong in health once they had settled in the place which the Lord would lead them. It turned out to be a true prophecy as the homeless saints pitched their tents and winter quarters. He prophesied that no shot would be fired at the Mormon battalion. Now that's a very unusual promise and prophecy for a group of men entering into military service. As Brigham Young recruited men for the battalion, he boldly prophesied the following concerning the safety of the battalion. If you will live your religion, obey the respect your officers, and hold sacred the property of the people among whom you travel, I promise you in the name of Israel's God that not one of you shall fall by the hand of an enemy. Though there will be battles fought in your front and your rear and to your right and on your left, you will not have any fighting to do. Brigham Young also prophesied that Jackson County, Missouri, would be evacuated. Before congregations of thousands of saints, President Young prophesied that Jackson County, Missouri, would be evacuated of its inhabitants as a punishment for its violent treatment of the saints. This prophecy was formally published a year before it was fulfilled during the Civil War. During the Civil War, General Orders Number 11, given on August 25th, 1863, by Brigadier General Ewing, ordered that all people living in Bates, Cass, and Jackson counties must be evacuated. According to one historian, the suffering of the Missourians at this time was beyond description. Another prophecy that made by President Young is that he prophesied that the California gold fields would not produce wealth. Consequences predicted by Brigham Young concerning the prospecting for gold were fulfilled. The discovery of gold in California lured over 20,000 prospectors in 1 year in 1949, and many more in following years, with people frantically swarming over the fields in search for gold. The saints living in poverty needed money to build up their new city in the Salt Lake Valley, as well as to run the affairs of the church. Some of them saw the gold fields as a great opportunity to obtain the wealth they so much needed. Undoubtedly, they were alarmed to hear President Young immediately warn the saints against searching for gold. History attests to the soundness of this prophetic warning. The vast majority of gold seekers did not find great fortunes. They found only hardship and suffering, and the few saints who ignored the warning lost their testimonies just as he had prophesied. Although the lucky few who did strike it rich at least made enough money to return home with pride intact, miners' journals and letters to family and friends revealed that many made only enough to keep going. Wrote one, "Everybody in the States who has friends here is always writing of them to come home. Now they all long to go home. But it is hard for a man to leave with nothing. I have no pilot yet, but you can bet your life I will never come home until I have something more than when I started." Brigham Young prophesied that many ores and minerals could be found in Utah rather than in California. On August 14th, 1853, President Brigham Young announced that there were many ores and minerals in the hills and mountains of Utah. The encyclopedias list Utah as one of the richest areas of the world in the production of gold, silver, lead, copper, zinc, uranium, gold, oil, coal, natural gas, iron ore, salt, etc. The Bingham Canyon copper mine, located in the southwest part of the Salt Lake Valley, is the largest excavation in the world, producing more than 1/5 of the nation's copper. Utah is foremost in the producer in beryllium and molybdenum, and the only source of gilsonite. He prophesied the end of plural marriage in the church. The fundamentalists, break-off groups, don't like to hear this, but he did predict the end. They have assumed that Brigham Young insisted that plural marriage was always to be practiced and was required for exaltation. Not true. Instead, he said men can embrace the principle without taking a second wife, literally, and still be justified before the Lord. He taught that circumstances alter cases, for what is now required of the people may not be required of a people that may live 100 years hence. This is a discourse given on October the 8th, 1854. On another occasion, he said that if the time comes that it becomes wrong to have more than one wife at a time, the Lord will reveal it by and by, and he will put it away that it will not be known in the church. Brigham Young said that he would be willing to give up his wives if those who would take them would lead them to eternal salvation. He also said that if he had only one wife, it would be all right. Brigham Young said that if every man could have but one wife and live righteously and serve God, there would be no need for plural marriage. Brigham Young also said, if the Lord says, let them, the plural wives, let them alone, how long? Until we go into the grave, if the Lord demands it. It does not matter how many wives you have here or there. In the same discourse, he said that other principles are of greater import, such as the preaching of the gospel, producing righteousness, and establishing the reign of universal peace. Another prophecy that Brigham Young made, very interesting, was that the blacks would receive the priesthood. There are some statements that he made which would seem to contradict what he said at other times. He said that at some future day, black church members would have all the privileges and more enjoyed by other members of the church. He prophesied that presidents and kings would confer with church leaders. This was a very surprising prophecy to be made by a people who were despised and rejected. A prophecy made by Brigham Young concerning visitors to the church headquarters has been fulfilled. On the 8th of July, 1855, just after the church had been driven from Illinois, as it had been driven so many times before, away from society and civilization, President Brigham Young prophesied that in the future, kings, nobles, and emperors and wise men of the earth would travel to the headquarters of the church to visit and obtain counsel and wisdom from the leaders of the church. On another occasion, he reaffirmed his prophecy. The kings and potentates of the nations will come up to Zion to inquire after the ways of the Lord and to seek out the knowledge and wisdom and understanding manifested through the saints of the Most High. This prophecy is being fulfilled on a regular basis. Many U.S. presidents have called upon the church leaders. One of the first U.S. presidents to travel to Utah was President Ulysses S. Grant, who met with Brigham Young in 1875. Rutherford B. Hayes met with Latter-day Saint leaders John Taylor, George Buchanan, and Daniel H. Wells in 1880. In 1952, Elder Ezra Taft Benson of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles was appointed by U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower to serve as his cabinet secretary of agriculture. Elder Benson was particularly effective in filling this role. In 1953, he was featured as Time Magazine's Man of the Year. Prior to his election as President of the United States, John F. Kennedy met with church leaders and spoke at the Tabernacle, Salt Lake City, Utah, December 23rd, 1960. In his address, he spoke of the importance of the contribution made by LDS pioneers in colonizing the Intermountain West. He also spoke of LDS apostle Reed Smoot and referred to the Doctrine and Covenants, section 101. He also gave a similar address in the Tabernacle on in September 26, 1963. On September the 10th, 1982, President Ronald Reagan met with Gordon B. Hinckley of the First Presidency and toured the Welfare Service Center of the church to obtain ideas for revamping the federal welfare system. Afterwards, as President Reagan remarked, if more people had had this idea back when the Great Depression hit, there would not be any government welfare today or need for it. It's an idea that once characterized our nation. It's an idea that should be reborn nationwide. It holds the key to renewal of America in the years ahead. Her Majesty Queen Sirkit declared herself very impressed after visiting some of the welfare facilities in Salt Lake City 27 years ago. The Queen accompanied Her Royal Highness Prince Chillabon, spent 4 days in Utah during the stop of her 3-week tour of the United States in 1981. The more I hear of the Mormon Church, she said, the more I am impressed with its ideals, she told her host, Keith Kirkham. King Taufa'ahau Tupofa of Tonga visited with leaders of the church in Salt Lake City, Utah, several times, such as in the year 2004. His wife, Queen Halavalu Mata'aho, also met with church leaders in 1991 for 6 days as a guest of the church. Brigham Young prophesied that the Salt Lake Valley would be home to millions. Brigham Young prophesied that in the future, the Salt Lake Valley would be filled with 3 million people, that there would be large places of manufacture and storage, and that the Jordan River would run through the center of the population. This is a prophecy made to William B. Armstrong. This prophecy is being fulfilled with the rapid growth in the population of the Salt Lake Valley. As of the year 2017, the population was said to be close to 2 million. He prophesied that men will someday visit planets. On September 16th, 1871, President Brigham Young prophesied that men would someday be able to visit planets. Or Parley P. Pratt prophesied the same thing in his book, The Key to the Science of Theology. This prophecy has been fulfilled indirectly by unmanned spacecraft having soared to the planets. NASA's Mars Exploration Rover mission, MER, is an ongoing robotic space mission involving 2 rovers, Spirit and Opportunity, exploring the planet Mars. It began in the year 2003 with the sending of the 2 rovers, Mir A, Spirit, and Mir B, Opportunity, to explore the Martian surface and geology. Amazing, isn't it? Remarkable. Brigham Young also prophesied the church would construct thousands of temples. We can see that being fulfilled in our day. Brigham Young said that in the last days there would be thousands of temples all over the world. In 1856, he declared that, in his words, in order to accomplish the work of salvation for the dead, there will have to be not only one temple, but thousands of them, and thousands and tens of thousands of men and women will go into these temples and officiate for people who have lived as far back as the Lord shall reveal. This has been indirectly fulfilled by the church turning stake centers into temporary temples whenever a temple dedication is transmitted to the thousands of stake senders for special dedications. Thanks for watching, and remember, call, don't fall. Call on the revealer of prophecies. Don't fall for the talebearers and tattlers who go about stirring up hate and anger.